Fun fact, in the 1960s, a famous Israeli archaeologist made an amazing discovery that showed that the Judaism that we're practicing today is the same Judaism they practiced 2,000 years ago. Shalom, friends. This is the Kibber Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have a question or want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. In the 1960s, leading Israeli archaeologist Yigael Yadin made an incredible discovery. He found a pair of tefillin, something that is used by Jewish men every single day in their morning prayers, and often translated in English as phylacteries. This is an example. Here is one of two tefillin that we Jewish men put on every single day. It has a box over here, as you can see, and then these straps. In this case, we wrap it around their arms. The head, the other one goes on the head, sits on the head. So there's a box on the arm, across from the heart, and there's one that sits right on the head. And inside this box, which is made from animal hide, as are the straps, are scrolls. Scrolls that have on them written parts of the Torah that talk about the unity of God and talk about the commandment of putting on these tefillin. Now, in the 1960s, Yigael Yadin was excavating in the Judean desert, and he found a small pair of tefillin, and he brought it to a lab to have it analyzed, to have it looked at, to have it dated. And it was an amazing discovery. I'll tell you why in just a second, but let me tell you a great story that is connected to this incredible find. Yigael Yadin was on a train, and he was bringing these tefillin to the lab to have them tested, looked at, checked, analyzed. And while he's sitting on the train, there's actually a very religious man who's going through the train. And sometimes you see things like this in Israel, the Jewish state. And he's asking people, do you want to put on tefillin? Do you want to put on tefillin? Right? He's helping people to do the mitzvah, the commandment of putting on tefillin. And one person after the next is saying, no, ignoring him, not interested. But he doesn't lose faith. He keeps going with a smile from one person to the next, asking, would you like to put on tefillin? And then he gets up to Yigael Yadin. Now, you need to know something about Yigael Yadin. He was an amazing military general in the IDF. He was one of Israel's most important archaeologists, like I mentioned before. He was also very secular. He was raised on a very secular kibbutz and was very proud to be Jewish, loved Israel, did like everything he could for Israel. But he wasn't into religion. That wasn't his thing, right? So then this guy comes up to him and he asks Yigael Yadin, would you like to put on tefillin? Oh, Yigael Yadin putting on tefillin, doing this commandment, not his thing. He's not interested. But he heard this man had a very specific accent. And he said, where's your accent from? And he said, a certain place in Russia. He's like, wow. He's like, I know it wasn't so easy for Jews to be Jewish in Russia. Were you ever arrested? He said, yes. And he said, where did you go? And he said, wherever, somewhere in Siberia. And he said, wow, how long were you there for? He said, for 10 years. And he said, tell me, when you were in Siberia for 10 years, did you put on tefillin? And the man looked at him right in the eye and said, every single day. And sometimes they would beat me for doing so. That really had an impact on Yigael Yadin. And he said to this man, he's like, look, if you can put on tefillin in Siberia, I can put on tefillin here in the state of Israel. And right there on the train, Yigael Yadin puts on tefillin. Unbelievable moment. The man moves on with his tefillin, asking other people, would you like to put on tefillin? Now, there's a woman sitting right across from Yigael Yadin. And she said, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I have to say something. I know who you are. Most of the people on the train know who you are. This man, I can tell, didn't know who you were, who asked you to put on tefillin. What you just did was an amazing thing and really moved me. And Yigael Yadin said, why? And she went on to explain and said, look, my husband, he fought in the 1956 war. And he was the only religious Jew in his unit. Back then, there weren't many religious Israelis in the army. Today, the Israeli army is filled with religious soldiers. But back then, he was the only religious soldier in his unit. And basically, There was war, there was a battle, it wasn't going well. He was shot and he was dying. And one of his fellow soldiers, a secular soldier who never quite understood why he put on tefillin every day, why he was religious, why he believed all this stuff, he was there with him in his dying moments. And he said, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you to keep your name going?" And literally the last thing this woman says, her husband said, was, "Please teach your children about the commandment of putting on tefillin for me." And with those words on his lips, he died. And she told Yigael Yadin this story. And Yigael Yadin was very moved, and he said, "Well, you know what? I have something for you, a surprise. You're going to be the first person in the Israeli public to see this." And he opens up his briefcase, and he takes out these 2,000-year-old tefillin. And he explains to her what they are, where he found them, and that he's on his way right now to a lab to have them analyzed. There's this amazing moment on a train in Israel, and he had them analyzed, and they were tested. They were 2,000 years old. And I want to end with this, that when they opened them up and looked at the scrolls, they found something amazing. Inside, now there's different opinions in the Jewish tradition, which way you should put the scrolls. There's 4 different scrolls in each of the boxes. 4 different passages written from the Torah. And there's a disagreement which order should they be in. Now we have a way of doing it today, in which order we follow. When they opened it up and they saw the tefillin, the scrolls inside the tefillin, they found that 2,000 years ago they had the same exact order as well. Right, the tefillin were made the same way, looked the same way, and inside the scrolls were put in the same exact order. When that was released to the Israeli public, especially the religious community, it was an unbelievable testament that what we're doing today is exactly what the Jewish people were doing 2,000 years ago, an unbroken and beautiful chain of tradition.